Hello everyone, Matt Blake here. Today we're going to be looking at a high school pitcher and talking about arm action as it relates to landing and how we get set up in a good position. So we got two different angles from two different environments we're going to look at to consider some of these variables. So when we're looking at this landing position, one of the things we're always concerned about is how this humerus lines up in the socket and understanding we need to be in a good position there to set up the rest of the delivery. Now the variables that we have to consider are, where is the lower half underneath him? How is the rotation setting him up? What is the hip and shoulder separation that he can engage? And then obviously, what are the joint plays from a laxity standpoint? Are we loose? Are we tight? Because that'll be a big piece of when the tensioning is going to pick up for each individual. Now, when we look at this actual arm action, it looks like he is deep here. But when you consider the variables in terms of movement, we've got thoracic extension rotation that we can engage, so we can lay that rib cage back and get a little bit more time here. We can get scapular retraction that allows the humerus to set up in a little bit different position. So the center of the joint might be different than what you think of when you get to this classic 90-90 position. Now, obviously, when we get here, we have to understand where the rotations are so that we're not getting caught too deep and we're losing our positioning on the ball, where we either have a long lever or we're letting that humeral head pop to the front side of the shoulder and creating more pressure on those anterior structures. So when we look at this, as he turns his hips, we're getting that tension to run through. We're in a sound position around 90 degrees here so that we can get a tight turn and get our torso and our shoulders to pull that humerus along with it without losing our positioning from being too long out the side. So as we turn here, we're getting that arm to get to that layback position, and we've still got a nice alignment of that humeral head into the socket. Now the only thing we can't see here is where that shoulder blade is, which we'll get to in a video later on, but that's a key component of making sure that we keep the ball and socket together. So as we work through this, we need to appreciate what that landing position was so we can understand the tensioning that's going to be at play as we work through this acceleration phase. Now if we look at the side shot, when we look at this bracing position, that will tell us a lot about when the tensioning is going to start to pick up and where that arm action needs to be. So if we look at this positioning, we'll say, this is probably somewhere in these clips. Now, when we look at the variables on the arm action, we'll talk about how flexed is the elbow to create a shorter lever. Is it more extended, creating a longer lever, which could make it more difficult to center that humeral head in a good position? How much external rotation do we see? Is the arm laying back already, or is it internally rotated and delaying that action? So some of the harder throwers may do that, but it creates more torque and more joint stress. It's just a matter of how do you handle that. Now we're also going to look at where is the humeral elevation. So how does that fit? Is it at 90? Is it at above that? Is it below that? So this might be a little low, but we also have to consider where is that thoracic extension rotation? What is the scapular retraction? So the humeral head will be in a different position relative to where the thoracic region is placed and how the scapula is affected by that. So we retracted because that's going to change where we need to center up. So in this position, I think he's actually in a pretty sound centered position. And now as we work into this rotation, we've got our torso supporting us with a good neutral core position. Our shoulders are turning, and now that's pulling our humerus into that adducted and externally rotated position to get to that maximum layback. So from there, we'll talk about extension to release in a later video.